Welcome back from the short commercial break. This is Financial Markets with me, Julius Nsubuga, and my colleague earlier on, Marcelino, who came up with Trading Dawn, looking at Forex. Now we're looking at the local stock markets and also the global stock markets and what's basically influencing them in the world of markets. So now let's have a look at, we've just actually looked at the Nairobi Securities Exchange and probably explored the share prices of each of these companies listed on the exchange. So now let's have a look at, Rwanda and basically what's happening just right over there. So if we may basically have this, the Rwandan, this is the Rwandan stock market, and you have a few companies also listed just right over there. Yes, so this is a glimpse on what is happening over there. So in Rwanda, you don't have the stock market quite very much active this morning. You have the Bank of Kigali also trading at, it is trading at 250 right now as we speak. Of course, in Rwanda, in Rwandan currency. So you have also Bralirwa also is a company listed on the Rwandan Stock Exchange. It also has its share price at 125 local currency. Also at per share. Also Equity Bank. Equity Bank is also listed on the Rwandan Stock Exchange, and you have its share price at 440 local currency per share. You have Kenya Commercial Bank is also listed there, and nothing much is happening of late. All these companies, there are basically no activity in regards to buying and selling their share prices, and so you can basically bet that nothing much has basically happened just right over there. So now if you also have a look at other countries and probably how their stock markets in Africa are performing, let's now just have a look at a few countries here and there. So there are a few indices here to indicate how these countries are performing. So if we may basically have a look at all of them here, you have the BSE domestic company right in Botswana. If you may go in Botswana and have a look at these indices here, the Botswana Stock Exchange domestic company, well, that index is reporting that there is no change at all, no trading has happened, and so nothing much is coming from there. So no change at all in the average share prices of these companies just right over there. When you look at the Botswana Stock Exchange foreign company, it's an index tracking down all the performance of the share prices of each of these companies that are basically foreign but operating in Botswana. You can also see that nothing much has also changed on their share prices. And so you have the BSE domestic company, the Botswana Stock Exchange domestic company. It's an index tracking down the performance of domestic companies listed on the Botswana Stock Exchange, and thus you have it at 7,204.33 domestic currency a share. So the same for the Botswana Securities Exchange foreign company. You have no change at all in terms of the average changes in the share prices, and so thus you have it at 1,548.93 local currency. So that's per share. Now, if you may actually have a look at Cote d'Ivoire. Now, Cote d'Ivoire is also another interesting country, and you have over there it's quite volatile over there so far, and we have the BRVM 10 tracking down probably 10 best performing companies on the Cote d'Ivoire Stock Exchange. So you have this index showing that that the average change, or probably the average upward change in the value of the shares. It's up by 0.58% as we speak right now, and that is equivalent of 0.93 points added onto the share price, bringing it to 162.01 local currency per share. So now you also have the general index, the BRVM composite, which is basically showing that the share prices on average, the share price is up on average by 0.72%, and thus being represented by about a 1.54 additional points on the share price, thus bringing it to an average of 216.15 local currency per share. That's in Cote d'Ivoire. If you are to look at Kenya, you have a few indices here and there. You have about 4 of them, and to start with, you have the Kenyan Nairobi Securities Exchange 20. It's tracking down 20 best performing companies on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and right here it is showing that nothing much has changed of late, and probably these figures as the day progresses, we may actually see them changing anytime soon, because we're just getting started with the week, and some of them haven't reported their changes as per this morning. So you have also here the Financial Times Stock Exchange, Nairobi, the FTSE Nairobi Securities Exchange, Kenya 15, tracking down 15 best performing companies in Kenya, and also it is showing here that yes, you have something, and it is showing that on average the share price is up by 0.24%. That is an equivalent of an additional 0.48 points, thus bringing it to 204.25. That is basically it with the NSE Kenya 15. So that, we may say, is basically a very good eclipse on where it is standing right now. If you look at the FTSE, the Financial Times Stock Exchange, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, Kenya 25, just better to call it the FTSE NSE Kenya 25. Now, this index is tracking down 25 companies, and it clearly shows here that the average share price is basically down by 0.03%, thus being an equivalent of losing a contraction of 0.07 points on its share price, thus bringing it to an average of 214.60 shillings per share. That's for Kenya, and that is the FTSE, tracking down 25 companies listed on the exchange. So that is it. That's a rough estimate of how it is right now. The Nairobi All Share is basically showing that probably nothing much also has happened there of late. So if you look at Mauritius, turning to Mauritius, you can see that the SEMDEX is an index over there. It hasn't yet shown its data yet. Nothing much has come from there, from Mauritius. However, it is trading at 2,124.21 local currency per share. That's in Mauritius. And Morocco as well. You have Morocco. It's quite an active, volatile market over there. So they have about 4 indices indicated here. If you look at Morocco, you have about 4 indices. The Moroccan All Shares. The Moroccan All Shares is indicating that on average you have the share price of all these companies up by 0.31%, and that is an equivalent of a gain of 39.47 points, thus bringing it to 12,663.41 in Moroccan currency. Now, you have also the FTSE Morocco 15. It is basically also an interesting one to look at. However, as per the close of last week, well, we had its share price. This index was showing that 15 companies that are being tracked by well, it indicated that the share price on average is basically up by 0.57%, thus an additional 65.48 points, bringing it to 11,615.34 Moroccan currency. If you look at the MADEX over here, the MADEX is also an index from Morocco is also a very important one. And right here it is showing that probably you have, on average, the share price down by 0.35%, and thus bringing it to, that is an equivalent of losing about 37.46 points, bringing it to 10,807.69. That is the MADEX from Morocco. So you can see in Morocco you have 3 indices indicating an upward trend, and you have one index, which is the MADEX, indicating a downward trend in, or probably a contraction in the stock, in the value of a share, just right over there. So this is also very much important to note. Now, when you go to Namibia, you also see here that nothing much has changed. There are 2 indices to look at. You have the NSX index, and so you can see here that nothing much has changed or probably has been reported of late, and also the NSX local, just basically tracking down local companies in Namibia. Nothing much has also been, nothing much has changed of late. So you can see that basically these figures are yet to come in probably as the day progresses. Let's have a look at Nigeria. Let's have a look at Nigeria. If we may go down, further, let's look at Nigeria. If we may go down further, yes. Right here is Nigeria, and probably you have about 2 major indices there. You have the NSE 30, which is the Nigeria Stock Exchange 30, which is a very important one as well. It is tracking down 30 best performing public listed companies on the Nigeria Stock Exchange. And so you have, it's on average, the share price of those companies being tracked, the 30 of them, it's indicating that it's up by 0.24% on average, and that is an equivalent of 4.40 points added, and thus bringing it to about 1,820.23 Naira per share as we basically speak right now. So this was also the closing, and probably this was the closing of Saturday, of Friday, and now we're looking forward to seeing how probably this will actually fare by the close of today. Now, looking at the Nigeria Stock Exchange All Share as well, right here you can see that on average it's reporting that all companies listed on the stock exchange, their share price is gaining by about 0.16% on average, that being an equivalent of an additional 73.50 points, bringing it to 47,437.48 Naira per share. So that is the NSE All Share, tracking down all companies listed on the exchange. And NSE 30 is tracking down 30 best public listed companies. And that is very important to know. If we turn to Rwanda, yes, we've looked at Rwanda of late, and yes, we can see nothing much has been reported of late, but we anticipate, but the anticipation here that through the Rwanda share, the anticipations here that probably as the day goes by, you will see something begin to basically come up. Let's now have a look at more indices. South Africa, the South Africa top 40. This is the as of this morning. Yes, as of this morning, you can see the South Africa top 40 index is tracking down top 40 public listed companies in South Africa, or probably on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And you can see here that it is on average, the share price of all these companies on average is down by 2.48%, and that is an equivalent of a loss of 1,672.13 points, thus bringing it to 65,658.97 rands per share, and that is South Africa top 40. Now let's look also at the FTSE, the Financial Times Stock Exchange, South Africa. The FTSE also is one of those indices by the FTSE in London. It's also a very important index, so it is very, very much important to also know. If we may go back to the to the previous page. If we may go back to the previous page right here, Tanzania, you can see here, yes, you can see just right here, the Tanzania, yes. Tanzania is also reporting that probably nothing much has happened of late, but to the Tanzania, this index, Tanzania all share, is indicating that probably throughout the day you may have some bit of the anticipations of probably some bit of an upward movement as the day goes by, just right here in Tanzania. So we are waiting to see what happens just right over there. In Tunisia, you have also here, Tunisia, you have the Tun index. The Tun index is also a very important index from Tunisia. It's indicating here that on average, these companies' share price is basically down by 0.11%, and that is an equivalent of a contraction of over 7.83 points, thus bringing it to 7,078.92 local currency in Tunisia per share. So the Tun Index 20, tracking down 20 best publicly listed companies in Tunisia, also indicating that the share price on average of these 20 companies is down by 0.14% on average. Thus, an equivalent of about losing 4.31 points, and thus bringing it to 3,061.17 probably local currency per share right there in Tunisia. In Uganda, well, nothing much also is being reported regarding the change, but it is anticipated that probably you may have some bit of, we anticipate some bit of a gain as the week is opening. So on average. So the Uganda all share is indicating nothing yet of late, but nothing yet coming in, but we shall see that as the day goes by. If we look at Zambia, the LSE all share, the Lusaka Stock Exchange all share is basically indicating here that probably you have nothing also much has changed right over here. Nothing has been reported, and we shall see that probably as the day goes by. So the LSE EN is also is reporting nothing, and so is the LSE INV. INV is showing nothing. So we can basically just wait on to just to see the Zambian stock exchange as the day goes by. We can be able to just keep our eyes on the different indices just right over here. Now, if we may turn to Zimbabwe, also nothing much has come from there as of this morning. Zimbabwe is our last, and nothing much has changed of this morning. And of course, as the day goes by, probably we will see many of these figures begin to change here and there. And so, however, you can see here that the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange all share is basically indicating that a share price, it closed Friday with a share price of 14,655.18. That is in local currency. So you also have other indices right over there, but we can have a look at them probably a bit later on when they begin to get active. Then probably we can have a much more deeper insight on how this is basically faring right over there. So if we may look at other global markets from by Business Insider right over here. Yes, so you can have a very clear outlook right here from the Business Insider. Just as of this morning, it is very important to note that these figures are changing all the time, and it is very much important for you to just keep track have these numbers at real time. So according to Business Insider, you have some of these very wonderful and very interesting stock market indices, many of them global, including the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq and the NYSE, and so many more that we shall basically look at all across the globe. But this morning, as we basically, as we are up this morning, we see markets basically also a bit losing. And if you look at the global Dow as of this morning, it's indicating that on average, the index is indicating that on average, all the companies that are being tracked by this index, it's showing that the share price is down by 0.18%, and thus that is basically a contraction of about 7.05 points, bringing it to 3,871.28 dollars per share. So that is basically the global Dow. When you look at the Dow Jones just right over here also closed. The Dow Jones USA closed Friday also down by 0.69, and thus indicating a loss of 229.88 points, bringing it to 32,944.19. The Nasdaq 100 also indicated by the close of Friday that the share price of these companies that is being tracked by the Nasdaq 100, 100 best performing, best publicly listed companies on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, indicated that the share price on average was down by 2.13%. That is an equivalent of a loss of 289.17 points, bringing it to 13,301.83 dollars per share. And the Dow Jones, remember, also is tracking down 30 best publicly listed companies in the United States. And so the Dow Jones is one of those really prestigious indices that probably one investor may have to look at all the time, or probably we may have to look at all the time. All the big guys and the big boys are all in there. So you have the Nasdaq Composite. The Nasdaq Composite is also a very important index, and as you can see just right over here, the Nasdaq Composite is tracking all companies listed on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, and by close of Friday, it indicated that the share price on average was 2.18% down, and thus bringing it, thus an equivalent of losing about 286.15 points, and thus bringing it to 12,843.81. That is the Nasdaq Composite USA. So if you look at the New York Stock Exchange International 100, tracking down 100 international best performing public listed companies, it is right indicating here that by close of Friday, you saw that the share price on average for these companies was down by 1.6%. and thus an equivalent of a downward trend of 101.14 points, thus bringing it to 6,226.00. Now, if you look at the New York Stock Exchange, US 100, also tracking down 100 best performing publicly listed companies in the United States, right? Yes, these are US companies. Now it's tracking down US companies, indicated that well, the share price on average for these companies was down by 0.74%, and that is basically an equivalent of about 142 points, 100.42 points down, and thus bringing it to 13,383.20. If you may have a look at the Russell 2000 right here, the Russell 2000, as of this morning, the Russell 2000, it's basically an index. It's one of the most important indices, actually. So the Russell 2000 is tracking down 2,000 publicly listed companies with the least market caps listed on the stock exchanges of the US. So you have 2,000 companies with the least market caps listed on the stock exchanges of New York. So you of America. So you can see here that as of this morning, the stock, the share prices on average of all these companies was up by 0.81%, and that is 16.1 points gain, and thus bring it to 1,995.70 as we basically speak right now. So this is a picture of what is basically happening right there. So if you look at the S&P 500, it's also another very important index. We're going to be looking at the latest update from the S&P 500, which is also Standard & Poor's 500. We're going to be looking at it later on. But it closed Friday, indicating that these 500 best public listed companies that is being tracked by the S&P 500, that their share price, their average share price was down by 1.3%, and thus down by about 55.21 points, bringing it to 4,204.31 per share. So that is it with the S&P 500. That's the Standard & Poor's. So that is a very important thing to note right over here. So the S&P Canada also is a very important one. Well, it closed also Friday with a downward trend of about it was down by 0.56. It showed that this company is being tracked by the S&P Canada is the share price is down by 0.56%, and thus an equivalent of a loss of about 119.87 points, bringing it to 21,461.83. So that is basically the S&P Canada. If we may have a look at other indices, so we can see here that many indices here closed Friday in the US with only the Russell 2000 having gained. So, but the rest were basically losing, and that is something that we may have to note. Now, if you also have a look at Western Europe, one of our best interests, it's in our best interest to look at Western Europe as well, because we started the day on Friday morning with many of these stocks losing. But as the day closed, we saw that in Western Europe, most especially starting with Germany, the DAX index. The DAX index is a very important index, and you can see over here that by close of Friday, it basically showed that the companies that are being tracked by the DAX index, these companies listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, it showed that on average, the share price was down by up by 1.38%, and that is an upward movement, or probably a gain of about 186.01 points, and bring it to 13,628.11. So this was very much important to realize that in the morning on Friday, these stocks were down, and by close of day, they had gained. So that is really an important trend as well to note. So the DAX index is basically tracking down about, it's tracking down those companies listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. So you have even the DIV DAX from Germany is also an index tracking down those companies from Germany. It also showed here that stocks were up, probably the share price on average was up by 1.43%. Same as the MDAX from Germany, it also indicated that, well, you had the stock also, the share price of these companies that are being tracked by the MDAX index, that the share prices on average, the share price on average was up by 1.68. It closed up by 1.68%. So the same as the Tech DAX also indicated by close of Friday that there was some bit of gain. If we may actually go up, the Tech DAX, just right here, also indicates that it closed Friday having gained on average about 1.45%. So many of these indices are basically coming from Western Europe, because that's what we're looking at right now. And so it's very important to know what's happening in Germany. In Germany, you can have the general outlook through the DAX index. And in Netherlands, you can have a general outlook through the AEX index in Netherlands. So And also just recall that in Netherlands, just right over here, well, it also had its, on average, it was showing that companies being tracked by the AEX index, many of these, it was showing that the share price on average was down in the morning, but as the day closed, it closed with a gain of about 0.44%, and that is also very much important to know. Now, back to Friday, before we actually get to what is basically happening just right now. You see that the CSC 40, which is the index tracking down 40 best public listed companies in France, it showed by the close of Friday that the share, that a share on average was up by 0.85%, and thus bringing it to 53.05 points added, and bring it to 6,260.25 a share. That's in France. So if you look at the FTSE 100, Great Britain, here it showed that, well, you had, it closed Friday with a gain as well. So the FTSE is tracking down 100 best performing publicly listed companies in the Great Britain, and it is the main FTSE. So if you see FTSE anywhere, probably FTSE Nairobi Securities Exchange 40, it's just an index originating from the Great Britain. And thus it is showing here that it closed Friday having gained 0.8%, and thus an equivalent of 56.55 points added, bringing it to 7,155.64 per share as of the close of Friday. Now, before I basically proceed, let's first go for a very short commercial break. Probably we may look at Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland as we close up with Western Europe, and probably have even a deeper insight on more live stock market updates.